Welcome to the Book Party Podcast.
Join us as we journey into the world of books with Michael T.
Prepare to be captivated by engaging interviews, insightful discussions, and fascinating stories. You'll discover new adventures and gain insight into the creative process of the authors themselves as they share their struggles and accomplishments. Now let's hear from Michael T.
This is Michael T., and thank you for being with us this morning. We get to sit down with a talented author. At 9 years old, on her first visit to the museum, Emily fell in love with Breakfast, a painting by Henry Matisse. Now a single mother, she lives in the art world and can barely find time for her two daughters, much less Mark, the man she fell in love. Her days are a jumble. She's lost the thread of her life, but a contest at the museum where she's the registrar gives her hope, the chance to seek breakfast again. Matisse's words and paintings permeate her days and nights, and glancing at a note card of the image she loves, she sees something else she's never seen. The art of her life shows the power of art transform an ordinary life. Her new novel is a bold, transcendent meditation on desire, memory, motherhood, and the power of art to remake a life. I love this book. I could not put it down. There's a spare lyric grace of Martin's writing, and in this story, she captures the nuances of ordinary life. What we love and fear to risk what we lose and ache to hold. Her new novel is a rare work, exquisite work of fiction. That is from Don Tripp, author of Georgia, a novel by Georgia O'Keeffe. Now, to all our listeners, I would like to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That's bookpartypodcast.com, and hit the subscribe tab. Then scroll down to the icon of your choice, where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey. You can download us there and follow us, and then you can hear the whole story from our author. Now, let me introduce our author of Cynthia Martin, her last novel, The Art of Life. Cynthia Newberry Martin, first novel, Tidal Flats, won the gold medal in literary fiction at the 2020 Independent Publisher Book Awards and the 14th Annual National Indie Excellent Award for fiction. Her website features how the Spend Our Days series, over a decade of essays by writers on their lives. She grew up in Atlanta and lived in Columbus, Georgia, with her husband, and in Provincetown, Massachusetts, in a little house by the water. Her third novel, The Art of Her Life, was released in June of 2023. Now, Cynthia, why don't you take it from here, fill in the blanks a bit, tell our listeners about yourself, and give a little bit of an explanation of the first bit that I read there.
Sure. Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be on your show. For all the listeners, I am right now sitting in Columbus, Georgia, in my study where I can look out at the woods to the right of me. And I wanted to tell you just a little bit about my writing life, because I came to writing late. The first 20 years of my life were all French all the time. That was my very first passion, starting in kindergarten. Then I had 20 years where I raised a family and practiced law. Then one day came when I was pregnant with number 3, and something had to go, and that wasn't going to be the baby. So I was at home for 6 years with children. And while I've always been a reader, reading was a lifeline during that time. And when I finally had a moment or two to consider going back to practicing law, writing was what I wanted to do. I write about how we live our best lives, that mixture of freedom and love that leads to happiness. So I take a look at that in each of my novels.
Well, Cynthia, on your journey of publishing, are you a self-publishing author or did you take the journey as a agency author?
I am actually not self-published. I'm published by indie presses.
By indie what? I'm sorry.
Indie presses, independent presses,
Uh,
independent publishers.
oh, independent publisher. Okay. So the writing part is all yours. You do the writing, right?
I do the writing.
So with the publisher, is there a collaboration with the rest of it, or do they take over and do, the editing and formatting and everything else for you, or do you collaborate with them on some of this stuff?
Well, one of the wonderful things about being published by an independent press or a smaller press is that there is some amount of collaboration, but that depends from press to press. And I've been published by 4 different independent presses, and with each one, it's a little bit different. And but generally speaking, there's some interaction, like, do you like the cover? And but they're in charge of the editing and the cover and all the publication details.
Okay. Well, when you were writing this last book, take us to a point what you would consider your worst author moment.
My worst author moment actually happened before I became an author. I mentioned I wrote for a long time before I think I mentioned that I wrote for 20 years before my first book was published. And while The Art of Her Life, the book that we're talking about today, was actually the book that was published in June most recently, this is actually the first book I ever wrote. And I worked on it for 10 years. And while I was working on it, I learned how to write a novel. So, those cocktail parties that you go to every Christmas where you see people you haven't seen all year and they say, "How's it going? What have you been up to?" Whatever. Well, I'd been writing for about 15 years. And every year, nice people would ask me if they could read my work. And I super appreciated that they were, seeing me as a writer and asking if they could read my work. But year after year of not getting a book published was wearing on me. And there came a moment about 15 years in when at one of these parties in December, I was asked if they could read my work, and nothing came out of my mouth. So I had gotten a
Huh.
bit worn down by all the not being published, and I saw that I was losing my voice just as a person, and so I spent the next year. I had a blog at that time. It was called Catching Days, and I undertook a daily practice of writing one true thing about myself each day until I realized by the end of the year that I was more than a more than a writer who didn't have a book published, but I was, more than a writer, and I got my place back in the world and was ready to move forward.
Okay. Well, let's turn the coin a little bit and we'll call it an epiphany moment. When you're writing and you're doing something else completely other than writing, you could be driving, you could be cooking, I don't care, whatever. And all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off in your head. It's like a wow moment that something happens where I've got to find a pen and paper right now because this just wow moment happened. I've got to write it down. Give us a moment like that.
Sure. I love this question because this is actually how my writing life started. It happened with this book again, and I was at home, like as I mentioned, with the children, and I was thinking about writing. I was thinking I wanted to do, um, while I was there, reading was a lifeline. And so I wanted to be that lifeline for other people. And as I was first having thoughts about becoming a writer, just kind of throwing it around in my head, but I hadn't done anything yet. And in those days, and this was in the late 90s, I had a 2-year-old child at that point, and my grandmother had just had a stroke. So on Tuesdays, we would drive a couple of hours down the road, up the road to Atlanta. And on one of these drives, I had to pull the car over to the side of the road and dig paper and pen out of my purse and write down what would become words that went into this novel. And I was writing about a woman and the choices she had made for her life. And I actually, in fact, had to pull the car over and get that down on paper. And those words are in this novel.
Yeah, because if you don't get it down there now, it starts to fade, and if you wait, that thought starts to go away and you don't have it anymore.
That's
Okay.
exactly right. My mother always used to say that if it's important, you'll remember it, but that's not true.
Okay, so let's go to today. What is the one thing that you are the most fired up about, the most excited about today?
I am super excited to be heading to Maine next week, where I have two events, one at a bookstore and one at a library.
2
Yeah, and
signing events or
I'm really looking forward to the event at the library because I do a lot of bookstore events. I love those, but I don't get to do too many library events. So that's going to be really fun.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, this is Michael T. Thank you for being with us this morning. Go to bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab on top, scroll down to the icon of your choice, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey. You can find us on one of your favorite platforms. You can download us there and follow us, and please leave a review. And don't forget to sign up for our video newsletter and get the latest information for our upcoming shows. Now, Cynthia, we're entering the lightning round. The lightning round has 4 pointed questions for 4 pointed answers. So, before you ever started writing as an author, what was holding you back from becoming an author?
Well, I never really had the desire to be a writer before before I, it was a late in life desire to be a writer. And then once I had a book, I think the main thing that was holding me back from becoming an author was that I thought I had it in my head there was only one way to get published, and that was with the big New York publishing houses. And so it was only after I kind of opened my view to these wonderful independent presses who publish books they love without regard, for the most part, to financial success and commercial viability of the work, that I was able to publish, to get published.
Uh, Okay. What was the best advice, now this is in your writing, that you had ever received?
Wow. I think that was, I would say, from Pam Houston, that everything begins in the physical world. So instead of writing from my head, I began to look around me and notice everything around me, what I was smelling, seeing, feeling, uh, hearing, and to start there rather than in my head.
Okay. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Okay, I would have to say that I have something that is like the opposite of ADD. I have an incredible ability to focus and tune out the rest of the world when I'm working.
Well, you'd probably have that because in your work as an attorney, you would have to be able to tune out the world when you work.
Absolutely. And
Uh,
also to write anything in a house full of 4 children, you would also have to be able to tune out the world.
yeah, no kidding, huh? Okay, could you share an internet resource that you share with our listeners that you use when you write?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. One that I think is can I say 2? Are you okay with 2?
Sure, go ahead.
The one of them is it's kind of like a reverse dictionary. So if you know there's a word for something, but you can't quite think of it, you can put in the definition or things that you think of, and this dictionary will spit out the word for you. For example, if you can't think of the word can opener, you can put, that thing that opens cans. It's called, I think it's onelook.com, onelook.com, maybe thesaurus. And so that's cool. And then the other thing is personal, but for all the writers out there listening, writing a novel takes a really long time, and you don't see progress for a long time. So I generally print out a calendar from calendarpdf.com, and it's not limited to months. It'll give you however many weeks you want, and and then I can put a check mark every day that I work on the novel, and so I can see progress. And again, that's pdfcalendar.com.
Okay. Cynthia, we're now going into the grand finale. Why don't you tell our listeners a way they can get in touch with you, follow you, and find your book? Then take your time and tell our listeners about your book.
Sure. So you can find me. I'm Cynthia Newberry Martin, and I have a website, cynthianewberrymartin.com. And Newberry is like new, N-E-W, and Berry, B-E-R-R-Y. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me there. You can also email me through my website. I have. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about this book that is called The Art of Her Life, which, as I mentioned, was the first book I ever wrote and the one that came out in June. Michael, as you said, it's Emily's story, and she is a single mom with 2 young daughters, and she fell in love with Matisse's painting Breakfast as a child. And this is really her passion, her lifelong passion. And she just can't quite figure out how to manage her days and make everything fit in. I'm sure I think you have children. And so it's a little bit difficult to get to the things you love, make time for the things you love, and family too. And so Emily is quite taken with Henri Matisse, and his paintings and art and words feature into the book. So diving into this book is like diving into the art world with Emily. And let's see, what else could I tell you about this book?
Okay.
Um,
Cynthia, we thank you so much for being here this morning and opening up to us, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate that too. Again, this is Michael T., and we thank you for being with us this morning. To all our listeners, we invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab on top, then scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms. such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey. You can download and follow us there, and please leave a review. Don't forget to sign up for our video newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Book Party Podcast is powered by MTM Legacy Publishing, LLC. And this is Michael T. signing off.
You must not miss our next episode as we delve into a world of inspiration, entertainment, and thought-provoking insights. Join Michael T. on the next Book Party podcast and experience a new adventure, a new story, and a complete immersion into the world of Pages Unveiled, Chronicles of the Writing Journey.